What is up, everyone, and welcome to episode 47 of the Trainer Scoop. Today, I'm very happy to be joined by Dylan Guynn. Dylan is a competitive bodybuilder, online coach, and I think it's fair to say the most jacked individual I've ever had on the podcast. So, Dylan, really appreciate you for your time and for being willing to talk on the podcast, man.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on, man. It's the first time I'm on the other side of the podcast being interviewed. So
yeah, I've watched a few of your podcasts. It was really funny because I was kind of cyber stalking you, and I saw that you did a podcast with Trevor Fulbright, and I just uploaded one today with Trevor. So
yeah,
it's funny
how I was like, hey, I'm on next.
Yeah, two guys that I'd seen in the Full ROM forum, Team Full ROM Facebook group for anyone that is wondering what I've been referencing over the past two podcasts. Definitely check them out. But two individuals that I really like some of their posts and some of the things they think about in terms of fitness and coaching, cueing exercises. So definitely looking forward to getting to grilling you questions and a good conversation.
Yeah, Trevor's a really smart guy. I think he's underestimated. Like I run questions by him constantly. And I think he's a good person to have on for sure.
Yeah, man. We're so lucky to have a good group of or a good network, I guess, of high level thinkers and performers. Just from seeing your training online and seeing Trevor's training, I'm trying. We're getting there, but
yeah. I mean, but what you do with your content and stuff, and anybody who's making content, filming themselves using good technique, being a part of that community contributes. There's people who see your stuff, or there's people who see my stuff, and they change and they make changes and they do things better as a result. So,
oh yeah,
we're having an impact for sure.
Definitely. So I always like to start off the podcast by helping the audience get to know my guests a little bit. So would you mind telling just a little bit of how you got into what you do for your profession now, how you kind of became into the competitive side of bodybuilding and all that good stuff?
Yeah. How far back do you want me to go?
I saw when I went deep into the internet, I saw you had videos out from like 7 years ago or so. So yeah, I'd be interested to hear even a couple years back.
Okay. Yeah. Well, I'll start then when I got into bodybuilding, because I've been bodybuilding I'm 25 now. So I've been bodybuilding, I would say bodybuilding since I was 13. So 12 years at least. I mean, I think I was aware of bodybuilding at age 12, and then 13 was like, I want to do this. The way I came to that part of my life, I guess I'll give that background too. I was overweight, coming out of, I guess, elementary school and middle school. I was a little bit overweight, and I wanted to start working out. My dad had worked out his whole life, so I started working out with him. Just got really into it. Like I was running every day, lifting weights, just doing like rows and dumbbell press and all this stuff. And around that time, I was sitting in one of my classrooms in the 8th grade, so I'd been working out that summer, and I was sitting next to someone, and I noticed their name, and I was like, oh, that name's familiar. Apparently, like my cousin had mentioned that he worked at a company with someone who used to be a bodybuilder, very famous bodybuilder. So I noticed the name from that, and it turned out it was Flex Wheeler's son.
Whoa!
So I started talking to him, and he realized I was like really into all this stuff, and then we kind of became friends. And so I started hanging out with him and his family, like going over to his house and stuff. And I remember like walking into Flex Wheeler's like living room and seeing like the Arnold Classic trophies and just all of his accolades and these pictures and stuff. And this is, I've been training for about a year at this point, and I was like I think this is what I want to do. Like this is awesome. And I also had this thought at the same time of like, what's to stop me from doing that? I mean, like in retrospect, Flex Wheeler had probably some of the best genetics of all time. So like probably genetics to some degree, but at the same time, I just, from there on out, was like just obsessed. And I remember I didn't have a way to get to the gym. So my dad always brings this up. I used to skateboard or walk even, it's 45 minutes on a skateboard, an hour and a half walk to the gym, before school, sometimes after school. And yeah, so I just really, really loved lifting weights, and I wanted to become a bodybuilder. Fast forward towards the end of high school, I got ready for my first show. And I mean, it felt very natural to me to be on stage. I was a little upset with the coach at the time because he didn't really get me in the shape I would have liked to. Then I had, are you right with me talking about pharmacology on here?
Oh yeah, man, go for it.
Okay. So I became enhanced probably a little too young, but just because I'd been bodybuilding and I was like, I want to do this professionally. And at the time, Cody Montgomery was really popular. I don't know if you're familiar with him, but he was like he won T Nationals 3 times, which is insane. And I was like, I want to be like him. So I became enhanced at like 17, very misguided, and probably should have waited, looking back. But that's one of the things I think is a key point to mention as I go forward in my story. Anyway, competed and came off everything, and became depressed, and had this, I was probably hypogonadal, had no testicular function, no testosterone. Moved to LA to go be at Venice, and it was disappointing because nobody was there anymore. And then I think I really learned a lot about myself. Worked with a coach. I'll leave the name out for various reasons, but the coach that I worked with got me pretty sick. Chronically overtrained me, threw a ton of drugs at me, and got really sick. And then in retrospect, I thought there was something wrong with me, and like, oh, maybe I'm not hard enough for this sport. Maybe I'm not meant for this. And then I realized a couple of years later that he had done the same thing to many people. Like many people had gotten sick working with him. And so from then on out, I guess, I'm trying not to make the story too long, but it's kind of cool how it all connected. Stan Efferding was at Flex Wheeler's house at Flex's birthday when I was a kid. And he at the same time, like way later on in the future, he came out with like the vertical diet. And I realized like, hey, this is better than what I'm currently doing. So I started gravitating towards that, went to a seminar with him. It's kind of weird how it came full circle. And I ended up working with him and Flex Wheeler as they coached me for a little while. That was my first. Yeah, it was really cool. That was my first introduction to like a more evidence-based practice, because Stan is so evidence-based. And while I was working with them, I was just reading. I got a Mass subscription. I don't know if you're familiar with them. Eric Helms and I think Eric Trexler and a few other people. Greg Knuckles. I subscribed to Mass. I started reading research. I started reading more after I finished like the vertical diet. I was like, I started checking the references in the diet and started, reading more into that. And I just got really in love with the science of training, and realized that by optimizing all these things, and actually using science to instruct my training, that it got better, and it got, I don't want to say easier, but it was more sustainable. So yeah, then I started working with Jared Feather at RP. After that, I took some time off, did my own thing, and tried to learn as much as I could from him. And now I'm here. I totally went off on a tangent. What was the original question? I'm sorry.
No, you did it perfectly, man. Just a little bit about your background. That was it, man. That's really cool.
I got into coaching. Yeah. So what I said by saying that coach got me sick, that's like was a turning point for me. And after hearing what he had done to other people, the coaching thing is like, hey, I really don't like working a 9 to 5. I never have. It's just been, I like doing my own thing. So I just saw coaching as an opportunity for me to prevent that from happening and maybe make a difference. Because I still think that bodybuilding, especially professional bodybuilding, and the people who, the professionals and coaches in the bodybuilding industry that coach people who are non-bodybuilders, is still very bro science. Mm-hmm. And so I just thought like, hey, could I help make a difference by bringing a more evidence-based approach into this bodybuilding coaching space, into bodybuilding. And that's how I kind of got into coaching. So yeah, that's pretty much that.
Very cool, man. Wow. That's a pretty wild story. I would have never known it. That just adds layers to my questions, but shoot, I want to get to some of the things that came to my mind while you were going through that.
Sure.
So I'm 25 too, right? And I remember like, you know, we went through the typical like dare bullshit, and like, you know, there was a sign. I played football in middle school.
Oh yeah,
There was a sign like in the middle school football locker room, like, don't use performance enhancing drugs, blah, blah, blah. Did you ever get under, or were you ever exposed to like scrutiny being, you know, a teenager in high school, maybe when you were using PEDs, or was that not really a thing that ever influenced you?
So I was very determined, like very one track minded. And that's probably why I made that decision. That probably misguided decision looking back, I would say, because I was just like, I just want to be a professional bodybuilder. That's all I cared about. Right. And that's where, you know, a lot of people make those kind of poor decisions and trade-offs in health because they get in this like tunnel vision. For my peers, I was known as the bodybuilder. Like everybody I've been bodybuilding for so long, especially towards my junior and senior year, that like I was just the bodybuilder, and I got a lot of attention for that. And there were rumors there was another high school in my town, kind of like, what's rivals, right?
Mm-hmm.
And there were, I would hear stuff from people that I never met at that high school saying like, oh, I was on steroids way before I even knew what steroids were. Like I remember specifically someone said I was on Anavar, and I had no idea what it was. This is like my sophomore year. So, I mean, it wasn't foreign to me. I was already getting accusations before I had even touched anything. And then, I mean, I think I heard stuff here and there. In high school, I tried to just keep it under wraps to some degree. I told my close friends just because I thought like maybe from legality standpoint. But at one point, I like was, I just, you know, I had to hide it from my parents. And so at one point I was kind of like getting in fights with my dad. And this is I say this because it's not really like, it's no reflection of our relationship now. Our relationship now is great. But at the time I was like, it was getting in the way of my bodybuilding. Like I was like, I want to do this thing. And, you know, I can't be under the guidance of someone else. Like I feel like I'm old enough to be responsible for myself. I was 18 at the time, my senior year. And I just came to my dad one day and I was like, hey, I take steroids. I know you're probably not happy with it. If you're not happy with it, then I'm going to move out. And I moved out that day, like literally packed up my stuff. My girlfriend that I'm still with at the time, she came over and was like helping me pack up. And I had like my syringes and I had everything. And I was like, hey, this is what I do. I'm going to be upfront with you. I like just started dating her at the time. And I was like, this is what I do. I'm going to do it for the rest of my life. And if you're okay with it, then, you know, cool. If not, I'm going to continue to do it. So maybe it's not a good idea if we stay together. Mm-hmm. And she helped me with everything, helped me pack up my stuff. I slept on my friend's floor for a couple of weeks while I was in high school. Like I remember I had changes of clothes in my trunk, and I made it happen. And I competed that summer. So that was a really big thing. I mean, other than, you know, some of the other comments and stuff here, that was a really big one for me.
Yeah, the things we do for this sport, and I'm not even competing. I can't really relate, but
right. It was part of my tunnel vision as well. At the same time, it did wonders for me. Like, you know, put me in a spot where, you know, when you have to like kind of fend for yourself, you learn a lot, and learn what your priorities are.
Definitely. Yeah. I'm glad that that everything smoothed out with that, you know, relationship with the parents too, though, because that takes a lot of maturity to be that dedicated. But, you know, like you said, that tunnel vision can creep up on you sometimes. So that's good to see that, you know, it all works out.
It would have happened sooner or later. So I don't think it made a whole big difference, and it created opportunities for me, and again taught me a lot. So I don't regret anything.
Yeah. At this point. Yeah. I noticed when I was going back into the YouTube archives, you had one video that was like, I forget exactly what the title was, but it was one of your first videos that kind of popped off. So I've never really had that level of like, well, it was a really high quality video, so I will say that, but I've never really had that type of experience where like one thing pops off and maybe it was only a couple thousand views, but at the time, I'm sure it seemed pretty cool. So what was that like in your younger days where, you know, you got some online traction as well?
You know, it was kind of cool. It didn't really create any opportunities for me. So like that one, though, the first one got like a few thousand views, and people were, it was actually me. I collaborated with a student who wanted to be a filmmaker at my school. So all the teachers were having, like, the film teachers, and I think even in my, I want to say, like, my anatomy class, like, they showed it. It was really interesting. Like, people at school had all seen it. But the other one went kind of viral. I think at the time it was like 18,000. No, it must have been more, actually, now that I look back on it. It didn't really, like, I think for me, actually, it created perspective, because you realize, like, views don't really change your life. Maybe for some people they do. Maybe they do create opportunities for some people. But then I just realized, like when I moved to LA at that time, and I was like I have to create these opportunities for myself. I have to continue to work. Like, even if this video pops off, even if, any video pops off, if I gain any notoriety, like, it doesn't matter. I still have to put in the work. And that was balanced by me seeing, like, I remember one of the first days I was at Gold's Venice, and Sean Roden was training with Charles Glass, and he had these white tights on. And I remember I was just, like, stretching out under the stairs there. And Charles was like, flex your quad. And he flexes his quad, and you can see the striations through his tights. And I just remember thinking, like, I have so much work to do. Like, I don't even know where to begin. And so I never really, it all gave me perspective, that move, and, maybe having some attention. It just gave me perspective, I guess.
Yeah. That's a pretty cool leap. And yeah, man, it's unfortunate. I have a client out in LA, and we just can't find a good gym for him. Like, it's a bit of a drive to go to the Mecca, and he's like, even when I do go, it's nothing like life changing.
Yeah, it's not what it used to be.
Yeah. How long did that last, if you don't mind me asking, just being out there in LA?
Yeah, I lived there for about a year.
Mm-hmm.
And I just, like, realized that I could do whatever I did there anywhere. So I just moved back home, or closer to home, for a little while.
Right. Got you. Well, very cool, man. I appreciate that backstory. It's real. Like, I would have never known. And that's really cool, especially for those who have a good appreciation of bodybuilding. Like, to be surrounded by Flex Wheeler when you're in your teens, that's wild. So that's
yeah.
Cool.
He was actually because his son Darius went to our high school, so he was like the football coach. So everybody knew who he was.
Mm-hmm.
He was around a lot, so it was an interesting experience. Just, really weird. He was in a small town in California. He had moved there. Just the happening of that is really weird. And then how I met them, and then how I got into it. It's weird how it just kind of fell into my lap, I guess.
Yeah. Awesome, dude. Well, as our second part of getting to know Dylan, what I typically do with my guests is, what's a day in the life look like? But I will say, you have a really good comprehensive video of what a day in the life looks like. So I had to switch it up a little bit as I was planning out some things to talk about. So I have a series of marry, fuck, kill scenarios.
Okay.
So we can get to know you on a good level as well. So sure. if it's going to be like a cheat meal or like a refeed, is it going to be marry, fuck, kill? You got burger, pizza, or, like, let's say, like a burrito?
Burger, pizza. This is good, because I actually don't, like, I basically only eat burgers and sushi if I have a meal out, for the most part.
Yeah.
So marry the burger, because I want a lifetime of that. Fuck the pizza.
Mm-hmm.
And kill the burrito.
Yeah.
Now, I say that not having had pizza in a long time, so I definitely have cravings for it more now. And having Chipotle pretty frequently, still, even in prep, I have it. So
yeah.
And I love well, I can't even say Mexican food, because I don't have actual Mexican food. Man, yeah, my palate and experience with food is pretty boring, actually. Like, I don't really eat a lot of other shit other than bodybuilding food. But
right.
Yeah, that's I'll say that's my answer.
I feel like that's pretty standard for bodybuilders, especially, like, being in prep too, and training like the way you do. All right, marry, fuck, kill 2. Like I said, probably the most jacked guest I've had on the podcast. So we're talking leg training, something I feel like, you got a impressive set of legs. aspiring to that Sean Roden level of striation. But we got quad. Let's think quads training, Mary fuck kill. Let's do hack squat, leg press, and back squat.
Kill the back squat unless it's a Smith machine squat. Mary. Ooh. I feel like this is on a sliding scale because leg press and hack squat switch out as my better movements.
It's a tough one.
Yeah. Probably leg press. I would marry the leg press and fuck the hack squat.
Right. You guys have some nice equipment at the gym you train at too. I saw one of your videos. You had an Arsenal hack squat. Is it pretty well equipped gym?
Yeah. And he keeps adding stuff. Like he's literally, as we speak, moving stuff around to add more pieces into that gym. And he's buying another warehouse, and he's going to build another gym out here. So yeah, he's like, it's insane how I walked into that gym when I first moved out here, and I could just tell by the way he was talking at the time, this gym was half the size. And he was like, I'm going to knock down the wall of the women's locker room and I'm going to expand it. It's going to be double the size. And he's like saying all this stuff and how excited he was. And I was like, I'm signing up right now. This is the owner talking to me. And I was like, I've never been in a gym like this. And sure enough, the gym is now double the size, has like, double the equipment. And he just keeps buying more stuff. He's like, hey, what do you think? We got to prime this, and this. I'm like, yeah. And he takes my suggestions all the time. It's awesome.
That's awesome, man. That's the goal. That's the goal.
Muscle Factory Gym, Tempe. Just anybody who's ever in the area.
Yeah,
the amazing gym.
That's what you need, dude. That's awesome that you have that.
Yeah, I'm extremely grateful because I had a gym before that was not as friendly to bodybuilders. So
definitely. I guess in general, how's prep going? You're about 7 weeks out? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I'm 7 weeks out. As of Saturday. So prep's going great. I mean, I hate to say that it's been relatively easy, but it is relatively easy compared to what I've done in the past. Any specifics you want me to talk about?
Yeah. Well, one thing that I saw in your Instagram bio and that you briefly talked about too is like you're big on the vertical diet. So how do you feel like that fits into like your prep process?
Yeah. So the vertical diet is basically, I use it to structure the like skeleton of my food choices, or just to structure my food choices in general. So I first and foremost, I have my macros, and then I have a consideration for my micros. So I do, kind of have a flexible structure. I use Chronometer to track my food intake. And I have the premium, so I can put in like individual meals and stuff like that. And then if people aren't familiar with the vertical diet, essentially is like a horizontal axis to meet your micronutrient requirements. And then you build your food volume with red meat and rice. In prep, I would be like red meat and potatoes, just because potatoes are more satiating if I have those carbs available, which is what I've been doing. So I essentially meet all my micronutrient requirements via, getting a good amount of fruits, getting a good amount of low FODMAP vegetables, low gas vegetables, making sure I'm consuming enough iodine, enough salt, enough magnesium, some dairy as well. And I can reference Chronometer because it will tell me my micronutrient intake, because it has verified verified food inputs from like USDA and a few others. So it will tell you the micronutrients in the food. And so I'll verify that I'm at a good amount of my micronutrient, the requirements. And then I basically eat mostly red meat and potatoes. I become less dogmatic as I've educated myself more on like nutrition science, and, been a little more flexible with like maybe my protein choices and just flexible in general, because I just think it's a little bit more sustainable. Like if I want a protein shake, then I'll have a protein shake. But I still have the majority of that because like red meat is so nutrient dense, especially for someone who's a lot smaller and has less food to eat. It is really important that you get those micronutrients in, because you're in a low energy available state, you're eating a low amount of food, you're more likely to develop those deficiencies. Maybe myself, I'm not, but I also, there not a whole lot of data, but I've heard a few people discuss this, that with the larger body mass and the demands of of the demands of, you know, training, especially, you know, at the level that I'm at, the size that I'm at, the demands for certain nutrients go up. Obviously, just in proportion, like protein goes up and macros go up, but the demands for certain nutrients go up. You know, there's a few studies with iodine deficiency in I can't remember what the specific study was. It was like, I think Japanese athletes or something, but they were all iodine deficient because you lose iodine through your sweat. And so if you are, you know, doing these 2-hour workouts with tons of volume, and you know, sweating a lot, especially here, I'm in a climate that's dry, so you can sweat a lot but not feel like you're sweating because it evaporates quickly. And it's really important to make sure you're consuming enough iodine and enough sodium and potassium and all that stuff. So I basically structure the foundation of my diet with the vertical diet. And I try my best to also facilitate that with my clients. Obviously, sustainability is really important first, but yeah, that's essentially how I use that. Excuse me. Do you have any other specific questions around the vertical diet, or?
I have like a basic understanding. I feel like we could really delve into it, but that would take up a lot of time. I would suggest that everybody listening, just, you know, you could go to YouTube and type in like Stan Efferding vertical diet.
Yeah, he has a ton of great videos on it. I do want to say that I think people misrepresent his diet a lot. I think people who have never read the PDF don't actually understand what it's about, and they think it maybe like is not evidence-based. And maybe, you know what, like there's some stuff in here that he says, there's some stuff in there that he says because he also came from like a bodybuilding background that maybe isn't as evidence-based. You know, some of it has been confirmed with science, some of it has been, you know, maybe a little less accurate. But one thing I always say is that, you know, just because someone says one thing that maybe doesn't fit the, you know, the scientific consensus doesn't mean that everything they say is incorrect. And I did a video that kind of explained all that on my YouTube, like, you know, why people misrepresent it and kind of why the confusion around something like that. But I would say that it's a really evidence-based program just for people who are curious, and it's done really well. But yeah, tons of videos on YouTube about it. So
yeah, I'm gonna have to check your video out, man. That's interesting stuff. And it's something that I feel like, you know, I'm like, I try to stay in tune with the bodybuilding community, and you never really know what exactly coach is giving to their client, because, you know, that's kind of like the coach client type agreement. But like on podcasts like Bro Chat or some of the other like bigger bodybuilding podcasts, you never really see a huge focus on micronutrients, or at least I don't. So that's cool that, you know, I'm sure at that level, and when you consider pharmacology, it's important to
that's one thing I left out, was like the pharmacology aspect of it too, and then just maintaining good health. I noticed a big difference in my blood work when managing some of these variables, and other recommendations by Stan.
Nice.
But I really think it is really important when you're a really big bodybuilder, you're enhanced, you're taking all these super supplements, to really pay attention to that. One thing I will say, I'm getting more insight into what bodybuilders are actually eating as I'm getting, you know, more clients and stuff, and you know, what other coaches are prescribing. And bodybuilders, just PSA real quick, bodybuilders do not eat enough fiber. Like the amount of people who come to me and have LDLs that are like through the roof, you know, 100, I think is the cutoff for the reference range. You know, their lipids are all over the place. And sometimes glucose and insulin and things like that. The amount of bodybuilders that don't eat fruits and vegetables and just eat like chicken and rice is scary to me. Like it's definitely concerning. And if we talk about like the long-term implications of that, we're starting to get some more data on that. Obviously we can't really do our randomized control trials long-term of, you know, what it's like to not eat fiber. But it seems that the negative effects of meat consumption are mitigated by higher fiber intakes. And then you throw enhancements on that also skew your lipids. You're asking for, you know, cardiovascular disease and other complications down the road. So any bodybuilders listening to this, eat your fruits and veggies. If you're in an off-season setting, you know, use lower FODMAP, lower gas veggies and fruits. You know, because you can get some fiber in using squash, and it's not going to fill you up. It's palatable. You can eat a lot of food, and especially in prep. So yeah, I just wanted to throw that out there.
Gotcha. Yeah. But yeah, definitely important to consider those things. It's so easy, I feel like, especially in the off season when you just got to pound food in terms of practicality, you know, chicken and rice or whatever your protein source is, and rice, it's like everybody's go-to. But man, yeah, adding in those little things, especially when you have the considerations that you need to make for just being a big human, training hard, adding in extra things, like that's a really good gem. I'm gonna have to clip that one, man.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw Antoine Vaillant had a CAC score, calcium score recently.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually due to get one in a week here, which basically measures the calcium buildup in your arteries, can kind of give you an idea of cardiovascular and heart attack risk. He was in the 90th percentile, right? And he goes on in this video to say that he doesn't eat any vegetables. And he's like wondering why he's in the 90th percentile. I'm like, that's definitely a factor for sure. And it just blows my mind, like, that he wasn't eating vegetables on a consistent basis. Like, yeah, so big bodybuilders, performance enhancing drugs, no vegetables is a recipe for disaster. Just to throw that out there.
Yeah, that's a great point, man. To kind of pivot off that, you know, I've seen some of your form videos in the forum on Facebook, on the Facebook group. The training's looking good, man. But do you have any particular like strategies, or, you know, you want to talk about your training as you're getting into this prep?
Yeah, sure. So it's actually really interesting because I worked with Jared Feather, and he did my plan for about a year and a half. At the same time, I was reading the hypertrophy book. They released it this last December. I was watching all of the videos. I was asking Jared questions. And I got really into training science around that time. So then I was reading like Brad Schoenfeld's book and some of his research studies. Obviously, I'm reading mass at the same time. I came to the point where I was like, I decided that I wanted to do this prep myself. And I can talk about that more and later on if you'd like. But at that point, I had an idea what Jared was doing, but I also didn't. Like I just had the volume. I had an idea of what he had been doing in the back end, but I kind of how he'd structured things. Like I basically took all of the spreadsheets he had sent me and how he coached me, and I was taking notes. Like I was screenshotting them, going into my iPad, taking notes. Oh, he did this here. He did this. He adjusted my volume here. This is how many sets he had me doing per week, and then track the volume and stuff, and learned as much as I could there. And then I watched I read the hypertrophy book by Renaissance. I think I've read it. This is the third time I've read it, or I read it twice and then listened to it on Audible like once or twice.
Nice.
Read their volume book as well. The How Much Should I Train book. I've read the recovery book as well. Their diet book, I think I've read twice. So I really familiarized myself with their methods because I just think they're the most practical, most up to date. They're open-minded. They're rational skeptics. So I would say that if I were to bet money on people who are the most accurate, it's probably Renaissance. And a few other individuals in other departments. But right now, especially for training, I think Renaissance is pretty much on the money as far as I can tell. I do implement other things into my training, and I'm always trying to learn more. But again, I just really stand on their stuff. Anyway, so as far as how training has been going, I stepped into this prep doing it all myself. Like I basically, I jumped into the training on my own. I've been doing my nutrition and my pharmacology for a while. And I basically used kind of a template of what Jared had been giving me. And I started, really trusting myself. And basically that first mesocycle, I'm running 4-4-1. So 4 weeks accumulation, 1 week deload. That first training cycle looked pretty similar to something Jared had me run in the past when we did a cut. And then I started branching out and applying more of the stuff I had learned about phase potentiation, setting up the next mesocycle based on the previous and based on the whole macro cycle plan, varying rep ranges, varying loading, exercise deletion and replacement, and knowing when to do that appropriately, asking questions in the forum, asking questions to someone like I send questions to Trevor all the time, and I'm so grateful that he answers them. I send questions back to Jared because Jared and I are on good terms, and I ask opinions from everybody. But at the end of the day, I make the ultimate decision. So anyway, training's been going amazing. I am enhanced, so I've essentially just been getting stronger the whole time. But one thing that I learned from working with Jared is that you still want to rotate exercises more frequently because of the novelty effect. Because what happens when you are training and you're going hypocaloric is that your MEV, the amount of volume you need to stimulate muscle growth, in this case, just keep muscles from coming off, starts to go up. and the amount of volume that you need to the maximum recoverable volume number value, that starts to come down. So you get this window that's closing in. Basically you have to do a lot of volume, and you have this cap off, so you're not cycling volume as much. What was I saying about that? So yeah, the novelty effect allows you to not have to start your sets up here. It kind of allows you to be more here. It allows you to not focus on moving heavy loads, and you can kind of use some more intensity techniques to not focus on loads as much. So like you may start your meso with more bias towards like a 5 to 10 rep range, and then as you move on and get closer to like your show or your leanest point, you're doing more myo reps, you're doing more stuff in the 15 to 30 rep range, or even the 20 to 30 towards that very tail end. So you're kind of progressing through that range. So you're not focusing on the loads as much, and you're trying to get more pump, trying to accumulate more volume in shorter periods of time. That's where like something like a myo rep where you have multiple approaches to failure may be beneficial. So I've been applying that stuff. But yeah, all in all, training has been going good. I've been making progress, really trying to focus on technique, and pausing stuff more, using more slow eccentrics, really just, doing my best to not get injured and still hit that volume requirement, still work from my MEV to my MRV. And I've been learning a ton. Like I've been learning so much, because before Jared was programming my volume, so I didn't have really like a, how much pump or disruption did this exercise give me? I would tell him, but like, and he would program based off that, but I wasn't internalizing it myself. I wasn't doing the ratings myself. I wasn't changing the volume myself. So I've just learned so much about that, and it's really allowed me to help my clients better as well. So yeah, training is going amazing. And I will say, man, it is difficult to get to the gym sometimes, just because I'm becoming more fatigued. But when I get in there, man, it's I hate to say it, but like training is pretty like straightforward. Like I know what I need to do. It's all in my spreadsheet already. My progressions are planned. And I just go until I hit the number of reps with good form, and then I'm done. Like it's at the end of the day, it's like not more complicated than that. Obviously I have tons of experience and I know how to lift correctly and all that stuff now, but like, yeah, it's been relatively like just, again, I hate to say easy, but it's what I do already. So it's just, go in and hit my numbers. Like today, legs is pretty hard, but I knew what I needed to do, and I just did it. And that's what it is at the end of the day, I guess.
Yeah, that's really cool, man. You kind of like integrated everything that RP's been putting out to really, I mean, you hear, I think I heard Charlie say that once too, like the prep wasn't like super grueling. And then on the other more like, maybe I'm not even hating, but like the more bro side, you'll hear a lot of like, wow, this prep was tough. Like toward the end, it was brutal.
Yeah.
And yeah, I mean, just the fact that you kind of integrated all the things you've learned over time to understand, how much volume you need, progressing there. That was, I was going to ask you about the fatigue too, just because I've never really taken it that far. Yeah. Does that affect your ability to load a given movement, or not as much?
Not really. Mm-hmm. I'm pretty much, the fatigue is more general fatigue. Like it's just like my body feels heavy. It's harder to do things. It requires more willpower to just like move. Mm-hmm. But once I'm under the weight, I can kind of just, sit there, take some deep breaths, and the strength is there because of the pharmacology is kind of upholding it, as well as, I guess really the pharmacology is upholding it. And I've been titrating that to where it, keeps me at a place where I'm, where I think is appropriate for this phase. So it's pretty much there. Under the heavy loads, it doesn't really, like I was doing Smith squats today, and I've been progressing like 5 pounds on that lift for like over a year now. And like every week. And yeah, it wasn't too grueling. It wasn't too hard. I even feel a little bit better now that I'm not actually lighter, but like I have less body fat. So I just feel like I move a little bit better. I have a little less inflammation. Everything just feels a little bit smoother. So almost like I was thinking today, I was like, man, these feel really good. Like I don't have any like twinges. Everything is like moving really well. And I do want to mention on the fatigue management side, the fatigue management has been really huge too. Doing deloads, going to maintenance calories at deloads, not trying to run myself in the ground all the time has been really, really big. And one of the reasons why this prep is more sustainable. I hate to say like it's easy. or it's easier because like I haven't even showed up in shape yet, you know, and there's always the likelihood that I miscalculate because this is my first time doing it and I don't get in the shape I would like. In that case, I'm just going to do more shows and just practice my peaking strategy and whatnot. So I'm not really attached to that, but like, yeah, from the fatigue management side of things, just making sure you deload, making sure you pay attention. Like I also have a way in which I structure my day in which I never work for too long a period of time. I come home from the gym and I'm smashed. Usually I'll take a nap right there. And then I cut off work at a certain time of night and I make sure I get to bed every night at 8 o'clock. I have my sleep hygiene. I start getting ready for bed an hour and a half prior. I, you know, take my melatonin, I put on my blue light glasses, I take a shower, I, you know, eat a meal with carbohydrates. I make sure the lights are off and dim in my house. I make sure my house is cold. I put on my CPAP. I don't, you know, look at my electronics. My phone stays in another room. So like all this stuff is like, there's a lot of little things that I've done over time that I think if you actually micromanage my day, it's actually kind of neurotic and people would think it's really weird, but like it's what I do, I guess. So
Hey, that's the dedication, man.
Yeah.
And I think that's what's going to ultimately help you achieve those goals. But that's kind of like transitioning into my next question is what are your kind of like shorter term competitive goals? And then I'm taking it, you probably want to be IFBB at some point, but
Yeah.
what are some of your short term and long term competitive goals for bodybuilding?
Yeah. I would like to be a professional.
Mm-hmm.
I don't want to speak too much outside of that just because I've been enhanced for so long. And you know, I need to get some imaging done to make sure that I can do this healthy, stay healthy for a long period of time while still pursuing this goal.
Yeah.
I have hard cutoffs, so where the risk is not worth it to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I have to make sure that risk is within a you know, what I can manage and what I can and be comfortable with moving forward. So my plan, even just moving forward, I would like to compete in a national show. So I'd like to do this show and qualify. And then, you know, the ultimate goal is to be able to get a pro card at some point. I'm not going to say that I'm going to win it this year or next year or whenever. It's going to happen when it happens. I'm just going to continue to learn, collect data, and enjoy the process as much as I can until that happens. I believe I can achieve that. But after this prep, I'm going to take a great amount of time off and off everything, off all drugs, and you know, get a cardiac. I'm getting a cardiac CT during prep, and then I'm going to get an echocardiogram after my show to make sure my heart is functioning correctly. That'll give a more accurate picture of where my heart is at. And then based on the results of that, then I'll decide to continue forward. And if that risk is not within a model I can manage, then, you know, at any point, if I take an echo or a cardiac CT or I do some blood work and it's not within the cutoffs that I've set for myself, then I will shut it down. And I think that's a really important thing for people to not identify as a bodybuilder. You know, make sure that you are aware that there are things outside of bodybuilding that are important. And, you know, I love bodybuilding. I'm going to do it regardless if I take performance enhancing drugs or not. You know, unfortunately, those are a part of enhanced bodybuilding, and unfortunately, they have deleterious effects on your health long term. But, you know, just being honest with yourself about like the risk you're willing to take. Like, hey, if this were to kill me tomorrow, am I willing to accept that? What is the risk I'm willing to accept to achieve my goals? You know, it may be important to sit down with your spouse and talk about this. Like I talk about this with my girlfriend all the time. Have it written down. Like, hey, if I get a CASA score and I'm in the 40th or 50th percentile, you know, and I'm, you know, 20, 30 years old, maybe I should shut it down now because that's saying that I'm going to have a heart attack when I'm 50. So having those hard cutoffs. So I'm not attached to like, hey, I need to do this thing. I would love to be a professional. I want to be a professional because I think it'll allow me to have a greater reach, to reach more people, and help people stay safe and really bring more evidence-based approach to pharmacology and bodybuilding and also training science, nutrition science, make sure people do things more intelligently. I think it'll allow me to reach more people, especially in the space that I'm trying to reach people, which is bodybuilding and professional bodybuilding, especially because I want to keep our sport alive. I want to continue to see bodybuilding thrive. But that being said, I also will not just make blatant risks that are reckless because I'm attached to achieving this certain goal. I've matured a lot since I was younger, and I love bodybuilding. And again, like I mentioned, I'll continue to do it for the rest of my life, but I'm not going to just take a bunch of trend and, you know, hope for the best. You know what I mean? Like I'm going to be smart about how I manage this. And I encourage everybody that comes to me, you know, that they are smart and they think about the future as well, because this is amazing. This sport is amazing. I can't say enough great things about it, but you know, we have to be smarter about how we approach taking foreign substances and putting them in our body. You know, can't just shoot bottles of shit. But yeah, I guess to circle back, I would like to be an IFBB Pro, and I don't really have much aspiration outside of that. I would like to do that to be able to reach more people. I also think it's just something I've been wanting to do since I was 12, 13 years old. So I haven't really thought much further than that, other than just make sure I'm healthy and then continue to do these assessments every 6 months, every year, every time I run blood work. And then, you know, eventually there'll be that cutoff where I have to say, hey, you know, I'm not a big bodybuilder anymore. I need to downsize. I need to be a normal person for my family and for myself, and so that I can have a prosperous life after bodybuilding.
Yeah, man. I feel like you said, like maturity it really shows in how you answered that question. Real as a quick aside, just because this one popped up into my mind, would you compete in men's open, like theoretically, or what class would you compete?
Yeah.
Okay.
So right now I'm 245. My weight just hasn't been dropping. You know, it's probably in part the pharmacology. You know, I've been in a deficit. I've been losing body fat the whole way through. So I'm not complaining. I'm not going to try to squeeze myself down, I think 20 pounds to fit in the light heavyweights. So I'll be a super heavyweight at my show. If I do a national level show, I'll be a super heavyweight. And yeah, I'll just be men's open, because I'm pretty sure, well, I'm 5'11". I can't remember. I think the weight cutoff cap is I don't know what it is for classic. 5'11" might be 215 or 225. I can't remember. But I wouldn't meet that by any means right now. I'd have to lose muscle tissue. So
right. Yeah, man. No, you're good, dude. I'll riff on a little bit, but I think, you know, and some of my friends, I've said this to their face, so I'll say it. And I know some people might hear it, but if you don't have your stuff dialed in, like Dylan does, meticulous on the smaller, not even smaller, you can't call them smaller, but so meticulous on diet, very meticulous on sleep, why would you blast certain compounds? That's one thing that I just blows my mind. And I'm like, guys, what are we doing?
Yeah. So I have a lot of people come to me now. I'm fortunate that I get referred to some of these people now. And there are people who just, I kind of screen people. I do a consult with them if they want to take drugs. And I try to have this conversation with all of them. Hey, what is your long-term, especially if I can get them before they've touched anything that's huge. And, you know, you don't fit the criteria if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night and you haven't been compliant with a diet and training program consistently for 3 years. If you haven't been nailing that on to a T, and I think 3 years is even a conservative estimate, but if you haven't been nailing, and again, I'm not trying to be hypocritical because I started younger. I probably made some risks, took some risks that I wasn't willing to accept if I knew everything. And, you know, it could potentially take years off my life in the future. It probably did, actually. And it cost me a lot of money in a gynecomastia surgery. But you know, if you're not sleeping 8 hours a night, your sleep hygiene is not on point. You're not hitting all of your training sessions. You're not hitting all of your meals. You're not hitting your macros to really close to, if not perfect, every day. You're not making progress. You're not trying to educate yourself as much as you can. You're not a contender for taking this shit. It's a serious decision. And I think people don't really consider that. They don't consider the actual cost. How much does it cost me a month to be a bodybuilder? It's ridiculous. I could have multiple houses with the amount of money I spent on being an enhanced bodybuilder. I've spent north of $100,000, if not more, on bodybuilding. I bought pharmaceutical grade growth hormone from Turkey that was $2,400 before. It costs so much money to do it. It cost me $1,500 to get this gynecomastia removed on my left side. You know, it cost me hundreds of dollars a month. It cost me, you know, how much for posing this prep. It's going to cost me to enter the local show. It's going to cost me to enter the national show, which is $500 entry fee. You know, it costs so, and then my blood work every 3 to 4 months is $400. My cardiac CT is going to be another $200. Echocardiogram, $800. If you haven't considered these costs and it's not worth it to you, then don't do it, because if you're not doing those things, you can die. Like you literally you could have a familial heart condition. You could take testosterone, your hematocrit can get too high, your platelets get too high, your blood gets viscous, and you have a heart attack. If you don't know these things and you're not monitoring your blood work, you can literally die. You could be the person that's on the news that was like 19-year-old dies of steroid use because you didn't know what you were doing. And you have to really consider that. Am I willing to risk my life to do this? Like, that's a serious conversation you need to have with yourself. And I'm not trying to make bodybuilding seem scary. Like it's fucking beautiful. I love it. Like I can't say enough great things about it, but you need to really consider these things before you take foreign substances that are made in someone's fucking basement. Is your source a good source? People are like, yeah, my source is great. He supplies all the pros, blah, blah, blah. Like you don't know that shit. Like you don't know where that stuff came from. You don't know what's in it. Like it's just, there's so many things you need to consider before you go that route. And especially with SARMs. I mean, I have a ton of people coming to me taking SARMs. We don't even have clinical data on SARMs. Like we have like a couple rat studies. You could die in 10 years because you took SARMs and we find out that it's causing this clotting factor that takes this long to progress. It's just, man, it's a crapshoot. So you really, really, like all the things I said, you need to consider. Am I being compliant with my diet? Am I being compliant with my nutrition? Am I giving it all that I can at the gym? Am I really training from 3 to 0 RIR? Am I really, just, and do I love this? Do I actually enjoy doing this? Or am I just doing this for validation from my peers? Do I want to just look bigger? Right. That's a huge thing to consider too. And then if you need to get blood work, if you had to be in the hospital because you get an abscess due to you had bad gear and you shot it. Like I knew someone in high school who had that, and he had an infection and he had to go to the hospital. Can you afford that? Like, can you afford to stay in the hospital for something like that? If you don't have an emergency fund, which is, I think, 6 months of your expenses saved away in an account somewhere, and you start doing this, then you are already in a bad position. So yeah, that's all I got to say about that.
Yeah, man. I'm really glad we had this talk because I feel like, I don't know as much as you probably do, but if I were to guess, there are few pros or like highly competitive national level bodybuilders that are as extensive as you are. Like, I don't know that for a fact, but I would be willing to put up a little bit.
So, Jared Feather is for sure one of them. And all like, Mike Israel, all of those people are very thorough and very evidence-based. Just throw a few people out there. Joe Jeffries is definitely someone that I found. John Jewett is someone who I think is huge in that, and then his buddy as well. There's I can count them on my hand, the amount of people.
Yeah.
And I think this just needs to continue to grow. So I'm just trying to contribute to the conversation however I can. But yeah, I think if those people are saying those things, those people are doing those things. And I think like the reason Jared and I clicked so much is when we did that consult, we talked about this, and it's exactly what he wants to do as well. Like he wants to become a pro. He's already a pro, and he wants to be able to impact people, and he's already doing that. So I'm just trying to kind of follow in his footsteps and do the same or similar things and impact people in that way. And I think that's also a side thing that RP has been doing that maybe they don't notice, like Mike and Jared and Charlie, by leading by example. But yeah, 100%.
Yeah, man, you guys are doing good work, and it's much needed because it's way too often you see on social media that another good name in the industry has passed away. So props to you guys for real.
Yeah. And I will say, like, I think that stuff is definitely overblown to some degree. Like, obviously we live in a vacuum, right? So we're going to see everybody who dies, 20, 30 years ago, we couldn't see, there was no social media. So we weren't seeing when someone passed away due to complications of potential steroid use, which aren't even always confirmed by their autopsy. Right. But those are kind of overblown. A lot of the time these guys had warning signs, like, rest in peace, Cedric McMillan, but like, man, for years he had warning signs. And that's what I was talking about. Like the red flags of like, hey, you need to be able to know when to shut it down. And that comes at different times for different people. So if you're a year in and you get a warning sign, like, it would be a really big bummer for me to have to shut it down after this prep. But, if I have to, then I will. Right. And I have to be able to be okay with like, hey, I'm Dylan, the person first, I'm the bodybuilder second. And maybe that was what Cedric did. Maybe he felt indebted to his fans and he felt like he had to keep pushing. Or Sean Roden, who's staying so heavy, so late into his and into his older age. Like, but there's definitely things that could have been done to mitigate these things. Maybe they could have lived a little bit longer potentially. And then they could also be that person who has that, like, you know, George Peterson could have just had a clotting factor, had that, you know, something like that happen. But yeah, I agree. I think it's very rare to see someone who thinks about things and is really thorough, especially in bodybuilding. And it's like I think Mike said it on one of the lives in the Full Round forum. It's like, do you think if Ronnie Coleman trained with like full range of motion and progressive overload and, you know, good technique, that he would have, you know, been a better bodybuilder? And it's like, absolutely. Do you think if these guys knew anything about cycle design and stack design, that they could look better and get away with it with less risk? It's like, yes, 100% they could.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and I'll say I've been able to take my dosage. It's almost, it's close to half of what the previous coach had me on in under prep.
Wow.
Right? My dosage, and I'll just throw it out there because I think it's important to know. And this is by no means a prescription. I've titrated up to this over time. But in my off season, I took a gram total of gear. I was 265 pounds at the end of my off season. I've been as heavy as 285. I took a gram total of gear. I was 500 milligrams of testosterone, 500 milligrams of primobolan. And right now I'm on less than a gram. So I'm about 750. My peak dosage may be somewhere like 950 before I step on stage. And I may take that down coming into the next show as I want to drop off some fatigue. So this is a 250 pound bodybuilder. And I'm taking, you know, a third to a half of what people my size and smaller than me a lot of the time take. Right. There are guys at the gym, at local gyms, that are amateur competitors that are taking 2 grams of shit. Right. So, and I've been able to get away with taking way less. I've literally taken that dose down as I've gotten smarter about my training, as I've gotten smarter about my nutrition, as I've gotten smarter with stack design and using a polypharmacy approach, integrating more medications and using utilizing multiple pathways of anabolism and anti-catabolism by utilizing smaller amounts of everything instead of just running my androgens through the roof. And so I've been able to stay safer because I've done things more intelligently. So yeah, I think
that's huge, dude. Props to you.
Yeah. I mean, if that can get into open bodybuilding, like, we could see some really impressive physiques, and we can also mitigate the risk.
Yeah.
And to me, that's where we need to go. And how long it's going to take to get there, 10, 20 years, I want to be behind it. So
yeah, dude, that's an awesome little mission statement in itself too. So yeah, like I said, props. I want to get you on with your evening because we're approaching that hour mark. And I feel like we were like I said, gems on gems of good advice for trainees and bodybuilders looking to advance themselves into more competitive ranks. But if you were to offer one piece of advice to an aspiring coach, maybe they're a in-person or online online coach rather, what would your just kind of like blanket advice be for someone in that position?
It'd be a couple things. I don't know if I could just say one thing and be satisfied with my answer. Really care about your clients, care about their progress. You know, imagine like they're your own. It can be really, imagine like their progress is yours. It can be really easy to get into this, and it's really tough at the beginning because you're not making a lot of money, right? And it's like you want to take anybody you can on, and you want to just help everybody, right? And but also you want to make money, right? So you can see that like, hey, you know, I'm excited every time someone signs on with me because I don't have to worry about money as much, right? But I also need to remember that like, hey, this is a person on the other end of this, and you know, they've had their own struggles. A lot of the time they're coming to me because another coach, you know, fucked them over and had some really bad experience. And this could be someone's last, you know, attempt at fitness or bodybuilding, right? And you could be that difference. Yeah. So really think about that. Really think about that impact, right? That you can have on somebody in their life. And like, I've had clients who come to me who said they were depressed, and I've helped get them out of that because of the programming I've done and been able to help facilitate that. And that's huge, man. That's huge. That's bigger than anything else you could do. That's bigger than stepping on a stage. It's tremendous. So really consider, you know, the person on the other end of that screen or that spreadsheet. Really consider yourself and your integrity and why you're coaching. Like, why are you doing this? I have a note right behind me right now. It's on my desk. This is where like my like screen is where I coach people. And it says, how does my work help others? What are my values and goals that are linked to this work? And I try to consider that when I am helping somebody and I'm like doing a program and I'm exhausted and I'm going through some shit. And someone needs their program, like, hey, you know, why am I doing this? Like, I'm not doing this to make money, right? I'm doing this because I want to help people and I make money as a result, or as a side benefit. So that would be something that I would say, to really care. And there was something else I wanted to say. You know, always don't make people do things that you would never do. Like try to be in your practice as much as you can. Like I don't give people drug advice on stuff I haven't taken or doesn't have a lot of clinical data. You know, I don't, when I want to eat some extra food on my diet, I think about my other clients who stick to their diet and don't, you know, cheat on their diet, and they are really compliant, and, you know, I think about them. And that's really been a really cool side effect of like, hey, you know, you're doing this and there's other people watching you. You need to set a good example. There's one other thing. I need to try to remember it. There's, you know, really care, lead by example. Yeah, I mean, all the other stuff, I guess, is just like little tedious stuff. Like, you know, make sure you're continuing your education. Like, your education doesn't stop. You know, I've been really busy lately, and it's been tough to get my education time in, but I still need to make sure that I hold myself accountable in that space, so that I can continue to provide more value to my clients, and eventually get to a place where, you know, I can sustain my business. I need to be able to increase my knowledge to some proportion of where I can charge a certain amount, and then again be able to help higher level athletes as well. So kind of consider, you know, where you want to go with your coaching and stuff like that, and just remember your why. Remember why you're doing it, and don't look for money, I guess, at the end of the day. I've been fortunate enough at this point in my career to be able to say when it's maybe not appropriate to work with somebody, like say, hey, you know, maybe we aren't a good fit. But, you know, sometimes you can't get to that place. So just always do your best job. Don't take anything personal. Do your best with everybody. Know that you can't help everybody. You know, not everybody is going to be compliant. Not everybody's a good fit. Try to do that as much as you can at the beginning. But as you get, you know, more clients and more experience, you know, try to refine that process a little bit more. Try to screen people and make sure that you guys are on the same page, and maybe that you're coaching to your abilities, right? Don't take on someone who wants to, you know, be more agile and be a faster runner when all you do is hypertrophy, right? You know, even if I have an athlete come to me, I try to say right from the bat, like, hey, I know how to grow muscle. I know how to improve your body composition. I know how to adjust your macros. I know how to do all these things. I don't know how to make you a better football player or a basketball player. There may be some carryover there, and I will do my best to consult with other coaches and stuff like that, so that I can integrate that into your program. But, you know where your skill level is, and be honest about that. So know yourself, I guess. Yeah, that's it. I'm sorry to answer that question. So like, I feel like I answered every question. Like, you know, I went on these like long tangents. I tend to do that, but I hope that it, you know, provided some value to people listening.
Oh, I definitely did, man. No need for apologies, because that was really good. Yeah. I don't know, man. I feel happy in myself that I can pick good guests, and you were, yeah, definitely up there, and someone that's just dropped. That was a whole hour full of good stuff, man. Like,
I appreciate it, man.
Everything that was said.
I have like 2 friends, and I talk to people online all the time. But you know, I just kind of I moved out here. I don't really I know some people at the gym, and I'm friends with some of my clients as well. But man, I just talk my girlfriend's ear off about this shit all the time, and I'm sure she hopes that sometimes I could just shut the fuck up. So that's probably why I rant so much on here. You know, I love her to death, and she totally you know, listens to my stuff and lets me, you know, rant on and on. So I'm super grateful for her. But, you know, that's probably one of the reasons why I have so much to say, is it's all bottled up.
Yeah. So, yeah. Hey, shout out to her from being down to help you pack to listening to your rants, man. She seems like a real one. So shouts to her.
She put up with so much. I'm extremely grateful, man. If you if you are looking for a partner in bodybuilding, just make sure they're supportive, and that's all you can ask for, man. She's not a bodybuilder herself, but super grateful for her for sure.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, I'm sure she's glad to hear it too.
Yeah.
But yeah, man, as we close out, is there anything that you want to plug? Like, where could the people find you? Any new projects that you might have, so on and so forth?
Sure. Yeah. So I mean, I would say most of my content is I produce mostly short form content for TikTok and Instagram, because I just think that it gets me the greatest reach right now. So I want to reach the most people possible and help the most people. So follow me on there, Dylan McCartney on Instagram, which is my middle name, just so people know. Everybody always thinks that's my last name. And Dylan Guynn on TikTok, Dylan Guynn on YouTube as well. You can contact me for coaching on my Instagram. And you can just shoot me a DM, or you also have my coaching application, which is even better, which is in my link tree in my bio. If you want to chat, we'll basically book a call and talk about coaching and stuff like that. And then if you ever just have questions, I try to answer my DMs and stuff like that as much as I can. I unfortunately, fortunately, have had people come to me for advice lately. So, it kind of gets flooded sometimes, but I try to answer that as frequently as I can. So if you have questions, you need just a little bit of help, you're about to take that leap to be enhanced, and you're not sure, just shoot me a message and we can chat. So
yeah, very high quality content, I might add. That's what drew me to wanting to have you as a guest, man. So
I appreciate that, man.
Yeah, of course. I'm gonna be sure to link the YouTube, Instagram, and TikTok. So if anybody's listening, make sure to check out the show description, whether it's on Spotify, YouTube, or Apple Podcast. But yeah, Dylan, thank you so much for taking time to be on, man. Definitely, I might even have to have you back for a part 2 later on down the road, because there's a whole slew of other topics we could hop on.
Got a lot to say, man. So I'd be totally down to do that.
Yeah. Thank you all a lot for listening. Once again, go support Dylan. And then if you enjoyed the podcast, appreciate any likes and subscribes on the YouTube channel. You can leave me a review on Spotify and Apple Podcasts. Be sure to share it around with your friends. Share it around with any aspiring bodybuilders that could gain from Dylan's knowledge here. But yep, I appreciate you all for listening. Looking forward to seeing you all in the next episode.